A growing number of blue states are exploring an exit tax or wealth tax in order to combat revenue losses from residents fleeing to lower tax areas.
Before we get into today's story, I need you to picture something for a second. Your grandmother standing over a pot of boiling pasta, gently shaking that little blue and yellow canister. Your father out in the driveway before a winter storm, loading rock salt into the spreader. That same umbrella girl you've seen your entire life on the kitchen counter, in the garage, at the grocery store. She wasn't a brand you thought about. She was just always there. As American as apple pie and the city she came from. That's Morton Salt. Born in Chicago in 1848, deeply rooted in Illinois for 176 years. One of the most recognized consumer brands in American history. And now she's gone. Not retired, not scaled back. The entire operation packed up and moved. In December 2024, Morton Salt signed a major lease in Overland Park, Kansas, the top 2 floors plus penthouse space at Corporate Woods. They're now the official salt of the Kansas City Chiefs, sponsoring a brand new 16,000-seat entertainment venue. The little umbrella girl is no longer Chicago's. She's made herself at home in a new state. Here's what almost no one is connecting. This isn't just another corporate relocation. Morton Salt is the canary in the coal mine for an entire state that is quietly bleeding out one corporate headquarters at a time. When a company with 176 years of history, a company that literally grew up with Chicago, decides the state it was born in is no longer worth the cost, something fundamental has broken. Illinois has already lost over 1.6 million residents in the past 20 years, with more than 40,000 people still leaving every single year, the equivalent of an entire mid-sized town disappearing annually. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why Morton left. You'll see the cold math that forced a generational institution to walk away. You'll see how this story is about far more than salt. It's about what happens to the workers, the communities, and the families left behind when the businesses that built a city stop believing in its future. And most importantly, we'll look at what Illinois would actually need to do to stop the bleeding before more icons follow the umbrella girl out the door. So if you're tired of watching companies and talent quietly disappear from the Midwest, stick with me. Make sure you're subscribed, and let's get into it. So let's start with what actually happened, because the details matter. In December 2024, Morton Salt quietly signed a major lease, not in Chicago, not anywhere in Illinois, but at 9401 Indian Creek Parkway in Overland Park, Kansas, building 40 at Corporate Woods. The company took the top 2 floors, including penthouse space on the 16th floor, and committed to more than a decade in the building. The Kansas City real estate community took notice. This deal won the 2025 CoStar Commercial Lease of the Year award, as judged by local real estate professionals. That tells you everything. This wasn't a small move. This was a company planting a flag. And within months, the Morton Salt girl was showing up at Kansas City Chiefs tailgates. She appeared at Arrowhead Stadium before a Chiefs-Raiders game, posing for selfies alongside KC Wolf. Morton is now the official salt of the Kansas City Chiefs, and they've put their name on a brand new 16,000-seat Live Nation entertainment venue in Riverside, Missouri, set to open in June 2026. The renderings show that little umbrella girl right there on the signage overlooking the crowds. That is not a company keeping one foot in Chicago. That is a company that has fully arrived somewhere new and is making itself at home. But here's what makes this more than just a corporate real estate story. Because to understand why Morton Salt's departure actually matters, you need to understand what it left behind. This is not some faceless hedge fund that appeared in the 2000s. Morton Salt has been part of Chicago since 1848. That is not a typo. When the company started, Abraham Lincoln was still a lawyer in Springfield. Chicago was a boomtown, fueled by railroads and the canal system. Salt was moving through the city by the millions of pounds because gold had just been discovered in California, and every adventurer heading west needed a way to preserve their food. Morton Salt grew up with the city. By 1880, a 25-year-old Nebraskan named Joy Morton arrived in Chicago and bought into a local salt firm for $10,000. He built a fleet of lake boats to move product west, acquired competitors, opened salt mines in Michigan and Kansas. And in 1910, the business was formally incorporated as the Morton Salt Company. Joy Morton was so committed to this city that when he retired, he didn't move to Florida. He turned his personal estate in Lisle, Illinois, into a public nature preserve, the Morton Arboretum. 1,700 acres that still exists today, carrying his name. A gift to the people of a state he believed in. In 1914, they introduced the girl with the umbrella, the image that would become one of the most recognized brand icons in American consumer history. She first appeared on blue salt packages with a simple message: when it rains, it pours. And for over a century, that girl was as Chicago as deep dish pizza and the elevated train. She was inducted into the Advertising Week Walk of Fame on Madison Avenue in 2014 as the first female icon ever to receive that honor. And then in December 2024, she moved to Kansas. So what happened? Well, you have to follow the money because there is nothing random about this. Right now, Illinois has the third highest corporate income tax rate in the entire country. The combined effective rate, including the base 7% business income tax and the 2.5% personal property replacement tax, lands at 9.5%. Only Minnesota and New Jersey are higher, and that's before you factor in Chicago's own layers of local tax burden, franchise taxes, sky-high property taxes, and regulatory compliance costs that keep multiplying year after year. Kansas, by contrast, is competing aggressively for exactly this kind of business. Office space in Overland Park runs at roughly half the cost of downtown Chicago. The state and local tax burden is meaningfully lower, and Morton's parent company, Stone Canyon Industries, already owns Kessner Salt, which is headquartered in Overland Park. The infrastructure was already there. The math was not even close. But here's what makes this bigger than one company running a cost comparison. Morton Salt didn't leave alone, and they didn't leave first. Let's go through the list because it is staggering. Citadel, one of the most powerful hedge funds in the world, moved its global headquarters out of Chicago to Miami. Boeing, the aerospace giant that had planted its corporate flag in Chicago in 2001, announced in 2024 it was relocating its headquarters to Arlington, Virginia. Caterpillar, the industrial machinery titan that had been an Illinois anchor for a century, moved its global headquarters to Irving, Texas. Tyson Foods, TTX, and many more followed. The New York Stock Exchange even shut down its Chicago office after 143 years and relocated to Dallas. Illinois' business climate ranking has fallen from 29th in the nation in 2018 to 37th today. The state has grown its GDP by only 5.7% from 2019 to 2024. The national average over that same period was 12.1%. Illinois is not just underperforming, it is being lapped. Since 2018, at least 314 companies have moved their headquarters to Texas alone, and Illinois was one of the states they were leaving. This one, 76-year-old manufacturer, a consumer staples company with real factories, real supply chains, and real Midwest roots, didn't leave because of lifestyle preferences. They ran the numbers and decided staying in Illinois was no longer worth the cost. When even a company this deeply rooted chooses to go, You are looking at a structural problem, not an isolated tax strategy. But there's a human dimension to all of this that almost never makes the headlines. And it is the part that matters most. Think about what it means when a company like Morton Salt, 176 years in the same city, decides to leave. Not the executives at the top. I'm talking about the people who work the phones, process the orders, manage the logistics, handle compliance, and coordinate operations every single day. These are mid-career professionals who built their lives in the Chicago area on the assumption that Morton Salt was a Chicago institution. It always had been. Why would that ever change? Then one day it does. And they face the same impossible math that workers at other departing companies have faced. Do you uproot your family, your kids' schools, your spouse's job, your parents who live nearby, and your entire social network to follow the company to Kansas City? Or do you stay behind and find out the hard way that loyalty to a city doesn't come with a job guarantee? The people who can't move, those with roots too deep or obligations too real, get stranded. And the ripple effects are immediate. The restaurants near the old headquarters lose their lunch crowd. The dry cleaners lose their regulars. The coffee shops, the parking garages, the local vendors who supplied the office, none of them get mentioned in the press release. None of them had a seat at the table when the decision was made. Morton Salt didn't leave alone. This is part of a much larger pattern. Citadel, Boeing, Caterpillar, and dozens of others have already gone. Illinois is quietly bleeding jobs, talent, and tax revenue, one corporate headquarters at a time. And the human cost keeps mounting. To be fair, Illinois officials and supporters don't see this as a crisis. They point to corporate expansion rankings, logistics strength, universities, and international immigration. But here's the part that should genuinely frustrate you. Over the past 20 years, Illinois has lost 1.6 million residents, the third largest population loss of any state, trailing only California and New York. The population only stopped falling recently because of international migration, not because Illinoisans stopped wanting to leave. A 2023 poll found 47% of residents said they want to move out. And the number one reason every single time is taxes. Illinois loses a resident to another state every 9 minutes and 21 seconds. And while that is happening, the response from Springfield has not been to lower the corporate tax rate, reduce regulations, or make the state competitive for companies and high earners. Instead, proposals are circulating to raise the corporate income tax further. The Chicago Teachers Union has pushed a package of 9 new or higher taxes, totaling more than $7 billion. There is pressure to eliminate the flat income tax for a progressive structure that hits those most able to leave even harder. Think about the logic. The 6% of tax filers who generate nearly 40% of the state's personal income tax revenue are disappearing. The policy response is still to raise taxes on whoever hasn't left yet. Jamie Dimon called this a death spiral. Fewer high earners, less revenue, higher taxes, more people leave. Illinois has been running this cycle for a decade. Now let's look at the states that are winning this competition. Take Texas. No state income tax. No corporate income tax on most businesses. A business climate that consistently ranks in the top 10 nationally. Since 2018, Texas has welcomed at least 314 companies that left states like Illinois. Its economy is booming, its population is surging, and cities like Dallas and Houston have become magnets for headquarters relocations. Kansas is playing the game even smarter for companies like Morton. Overland Park offers office space at roughly half the cost of Chicago, significantly lower taxes, and a welcoming regulatory environment. The fact that Morton's parent company already had a major salt operation there made the move seamless. Florida tells the same story. No state income tax, aggressive business incentives, and a high quality of life. Citadel didn't move to Miami for the weather alone. It moved because the economics made sense. Meanwhile, Illinois burdens businesses with the third highest corporate tax rate in America, crushing property taxes and ever-growing regulations. The result is clear. While Texas, Kansas, and Florida are gaining companies, jobs, and residents, Illinois is losing them. The gap isn't closing, it's widening fast. Low-tax, pro-growth states aren't just competing with Illinois. They are lapping it. So what would actually stop the bleeding? Illinois must face reality. First, cut the corporate income tax rate dramatically and eliminate the personal property replacement tax that drives businesses away. Second, reform the crushing property tax system that punishes homeowners and companies alike. Third, stop the endless regulatory expansion and begin serious pension reform. The state's unfunded pension liabilities are among the worst in the nation and act like a hidden tax on every future generation. Instead of pushing progressive income taxes that punish success and accelerate the exodus, Illinois should adopt a competitive flat tax and focus on broad-based economic growth. Look at what Texas and Florida did. Lower taxes, fewer regulations, and aggressive incentives for manufacturers and long-established companies. The results speak for themselves. If Springfield continues raising taxes on those who haven't left yet, the death spiral Jamie Dimon warned about will only accelerate. Morton Salt stayed for 176 years through wars, depressions, and booms. They didn't leave because they stopped caring. They left because the math stopped working. The question is no longer whether Illinois can afford to lose more icons like the Umbrella Girl. The question is whether its leaders have the courage to change policy before the state loses an entire generation of businesses and jobs. Let's bring it all the way back to that little girl with the umbrella. She first appeared in 1914 to sell the idea that Morton salt would keep flowing even in the worst conditions. When it rains, it pours. For over a century, she was Chicago's. She belonged to the city that built her. And now she stands on a concert venue in Riverside, Missouri, looking out at crowds in Kansas City. Not because Morton stopped caring about Chicago, but because the math stopped working. Here is what is different about Morton Salt compared to a hedge fund or tech company. This was a manufacturer, a consumer staples company with physical operations, real employees, and deep operational roots in the Midwest. When even this kind of company decides Illinois is no longer worth it, you are looking at a structural environment that has made staying harder than leaving. This is not the end of Illinois. Chicago is still a major city with incredible assets, extraordinary universities, deep talent pools, strong healthcare and logistics sectors. Resilience is real, but resilience is not the same as immunity. A state that watches its corporate base migrate, its population decline, its GDP growth lag far behind the national average, and responds by proposing higher taxes and more regulation, is betting that people and institutions will stay out of loyalty or inertia. Morton Salt stayed for 176 years through the Great Depression, post-war boom, and every cycle of Chicago's growth and contraction, until the day the numbers no longer added up. What happened to Morton Salt is not an isolated decision. It is a signal. When a company that has been part of a city's identity for longer than most countries have existed finally chooses somewhere else, you are watching the cumulative weight of a decade of decisions that made leaving the rational choice. The question that nobody in Springfield seems willing to answer is, how many Mortons, how many Boeings, how many Caterpillars, how many iconic American names does it take before the policy actually changes? The canary has already sung. The warning is clear. I want to hear from you. Are you in Illinois right now? Have you watched the companies and jobs disappear from your community? Or are you in another state where this same pressure is starting to build? Drop it in the comments. If this story gave you something to think about, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Stay informed, stay sharp, and never stop following the money. I'll see you in the next one.